Today, you're in for a treat. I recently sat down with Clive Davis, one of the most influential music executives of all time. For context, this conversation was some time in the making. In 2024, Zach O'Malley Greenberg and I did an episode on Trapital breaking down Clive's entire career. And I eventually heard that Clive sat down, watched the entire episode, and even took some notes. And if you know Clive or know his work ethic, you know that he's focused, even today at 94 years old. And that's how we got here for the conversation you're about to hear. We talked about his entire career, the impact of his Pre-Grammy Gala, how he's revitalized the careers of some of the most influential artists, and also how he navigated the business through his ownership that he's had in different companies, different experiences with artist development, and what separates the executives and the artists who can break through and succeed consistently and those that don't. And we even discussed some of his opinions about some of the current artists and the current state of the business. Here's my conversation with the mogul himself, Clive Davis. Welcome to Trapital, and here we are at the Beverly Hills Hotel bungalows with the one and only Clive Davis. Welcome to the show.
Well, nice to be here. Thank you.
We're here in your home. This is a place that means a lot to you. You've done a number of deals in here. I'd love to hear more about it. What does this place mean to you?
I started coming to the Beverly Hills Hotel in 1965. I had just been appointed head of Columbia Records. And the only person at Columbia that was previously allowed to stay here was Goddard Lieberson, my predecessor mentor. So it was a big deal to come here, and I've stayed here ever since. My children, all four, grew up here. And rather than take a home in LA, I mean, the Beverly Hills Hotel has been my home, so that many years ago, Ahmed and I would shake up the pool area where they have cabanas, and he would have Mick Jagger or Keith Richards come, and I would have the Grateful Dead or Joplin come here. And so it really goes back to the 60s. And my memories of my Pre-Grammy Gala, which is held the night before the Grammys, and for 50 years, mind you, started here. And we outgrew it. The year we outgrew it, the fire marshals, as I was about to MC the Pre-Grammy Gala, came in, and they said, "You're just over the limit, and we have to interrupt you, and it's going to take us an hour to set the tables differently so we don't violate the fire marshal laws." So I panicked. How do you keep the audience, and how do you keep everything intact? Robin Williams was in the audience, got a microphone, stood up, and did an hour of a stand-up routine. I mean, that I'll never forget. And then, of course, we moved to the Beverly Hilton, where we just had a wonderful latest Pre-Grammy, where I was introduced, I'm proud to say, by Barack Obama and Gayle King.
And I've been there the past 2 years. Great event, as always. And in reading your books, hearing you talk about the Pre-Grammy Gala, I know that it is a great room for the people that are there to make their own connections, make relationships. But I want to hear, what was that like for you when you're building Arista, you're building Columbia? How did that room help you in your career and your business?
I never viewed how it would help me. I don't know how I've been helped, other than the fact that for 50 years, no label has competed with that party the night before the Grammys. It started the first year of Arista, when I formed Arista, and Barry Manilow and Mandy were nominated for 2 Grammys. And Barry says, "Where's our party?" Because every label has a party the night of the Grammy for the artists that are attending. And I said, you know, Barry, we're a brand new company. There are 10 of us. We'd have to have a table adjacent. I said, you know, the industry is ready to welcome me back to the industry. I had been fired by Columbia at the height of my career and starting afresh with a brand new label. And I decided, you know, I'm going to do it the night before the Grammys. I mean, I said that they can welcome me and Arista to the industry. Elton John came, Stevie Wonder came, John Denver came. I knew I was on to a good thing, and we've done it every year, and it's one of my proudest achievements, because you know how competitive the music industry is, but wonderfully Lucien Grange and Rob Stringer and Tom Corsa, the heads of all the labels, still come. And it's a night of nights. And we're actually now looking into a documentary on the world's greatest party, okay? And the highlights of 50 years. Whitney played it, you know, with Lee 7 or 8 times. And I once asked Alicia, after she broke through and after that first album went multi-platinum, I said, what's your next dream? What do you dream it'd be most fulfilling to you? She thought for a minute. She said, I would love to do a duet with Aretha at your party. And we arranged for that. So that the footage for that documentary is Whitney duetting with Natalie Cole. It is the reemergence of Santana when I signed him a second time in the year 2000. And Alicia and Aretha, it's fantastic footage.
So you're on for 2027?
Oh, yes. Yeah. It'll be a special year in many ways. Yeah.
One thing that always stuck out was you were able to keep the event intimate, but the event's definitely grown. You have corporate sponsors, there are other folks involved. How do you keep that balance? How do you still make it special without letting it become something bigger?
Well, first of all, there are only 1,000 seats. And we do allow the National Recording Academy to take at least a third, if not a half, of the seats in the room. The other seats make up the shout-outs that I use during the evening, because I don't want schmoozing. I don't want executives approaching the top labels for whatever. So when an artist finishes, because it's a big room and because it's a horizontal room, they don't know who necessarily is there with them. So I, from the beginning of the evening and in between every act, I've sort of invented, which is now a signature of the evening, announcing, like this year, okay? I got off the ground by shouting out Joni Mitchell as the first. I mean, got as big a standing ovation as any act performing. I followed Joni Mitchell by Nancy Pelosi for her 26th consecutive year of attending this party. Then Berry Gordy, who comes every year, as did Quincy Jones when he was with us. I do that all during the night, and movie stars, and this one, Meryl Streep, and so it really is unique. And to this day, I mean, I'm aware of every new artist. I go through them, I see their videos, I praise the records. My criteria, will they get a standing ovation? I want a standing ovation for every artist performing. So it's not just good enough that they be nominated by or for a Grammy. they've got to be the goods. And this year, we had Olivia Dean, we had Samba, we had Darren Criss with Fave, I think is the way you pronounce it, as well as personal to me, artists who are timeless. You don't expect to see them there. I'll never forget one year, Taylor Swift's in the audience, Miley Cyrus is in the audience. It was before Taylor was a phenomenon, but she still was successful. And I remember as I'm looking at her and saying, you know, what you're doing is great, but the next artist you've never seen touring. I'm not sure or familiar with whether you are familiar with what he's done, but I consider him among the 3 greatest male vocalists of all time. And to give you an example of how big an artist he's been, I said, Taylor and Miley, an album of his greatest hits was on the Billboard's Top 200 for 10 consecutive years. And I said, with that, I'm going to ask all of you to give a standing ovation just in honor of his appearing, doing his greatest hits. And I brought on Johnny Mathis, who floored them, bringing gasps to the audience. This past year, I had a number of the new artists, as I mentioned, but the concluding artists, I'll never forget. First of all, my favorite song of all time is Bridge Over Troubled Water. And I asked Artie Garfunkel to come back and sing that song. Well, when I announced that Artie would sing it, I mean, it got a fervent response. And when he sang it, just looking around the room, the great Lana Del Rey was sobbing. And this one, I mean, the tears flowed because he was able to capture the fragility and the high notes still a little more tenuously, okay? But it was spectacular. You put some veterans, she's not just a veteran, but probably the greatest current singer was Jennifer Hudson. And we tributed Roberta Flack. And she sang The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, as only she could sing it. So she's there, Artie Garfunkel is there, but so are the new artists. I had Alex Warren sing Ordinary and Clips with John Legend.
That was a good performance.
Were you there?
I was there.
Okay.
I was there. I was there last year and this past year as well. Yeah. But Clips was great, especially with John Legend on the stage with them.
Yeah.
Switching gears a bit, you mentioned being fired by Columbia earlier, and I know that later in your career you had parted ways with Arista, the label that you built. And it's interesting because they're different scenarios, but there's some similarities there. And I'm curious for you, as you reflect on your career and you think about how you were, how corporations were there any takeaways you had from those experiences or any connections there?
Well, when you say you take away, yes, first of all, you learn. I've been blessed. I studied to be a lawyer. It never dawned on me that I would find all the songs that Whitney Houston would record. Find them. Or Barry Manilow, a number of his great hits. He wrote some, he's in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. But I am proud that I gave him I Write the Songs and Can't Smile Without You and Weekend in New England, etc. So I'm also proud of the fact that my documentary that Ridley Scott did has been on Netflix for 6 consecutive years and is now on Amazon. I'm proud of it because it stands for resilience. We were not afraid of showing, the good, the challenging, the resilience to fight back, come back. So you mentioned 2 things. I'll always be wounded. When I was fired as head of CBS and they claimed the true story was that there was an employee that I had never hired. I inherited him. He had worked there years before at Columbia, and he was stealing. So I had to fire him. No one knew that he was collecting invoices. And one invoice he collected from me was that my son's bar mitzvah was held at the Plaza Hotel. I didn't know he had a fraudulent scheme going. And he said to me, look, we have Tony Bennett playing, we have Jerry Vale playing, we have Stephen Eady. I can get 25% off. You're paying list price. So I said, wow, what a nice thing to do. I didn't try to write it off. They knew it. The lawyers for CBS, because this guy, and the reason I bring that up, is that his lawyer advised him to get a lesser jail sentence. And he claimed that he would assist the U.S. attorney in Newark, that there was payola rampant in the record industry. It existed at every major company, including Columbia. Bill Paley owned CBS. The lawyers advised, you've got to separate yourself from the record division. And despite the fact that I had taken Columbia from number 3 to number 1, okay, with Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Chicago, Santana, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Springsteen, Joplin, I could go on and on, Aerosmith. I was summarily let go. That was a low point in my life because I couldn't comment because of the investigation going on in the industry. So I was very proud that Ridley Scott, in his documentary, when we were all cleared, and there was no payola found, that the same company, Columbia Records, CBS, as I started Arista without any orders being signed, there's a picture of a check to me for $1 million for record club rights to any new artists that I would sign at Arista. So although you get the vindication, the wound is there. And in accounts of it, you still read where the facts are really applied and such. In the case of Arista, I was earning a lot of money because I had an equity share of Arista. And the year 2000, I think it was, I had just brought Santana back with Supernatural. It won 8 or 9 Grammys, the most ever. I had done a comeback sort of album with Whitney called My Love Is Your Love. I was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I received from the Recording Academy the Lifetime Achievement Award. So I was feeling great. And I had to accept all these congratulations as I got a phone call from the 2 people who were running Bertelsmann, which owned Arista. Would I have dinner with them? Of course, and I thought it was, along with the other congratulations, the year was extraordinary. So I went to dinner with them in New York at Lutèce, the #1 restaurant. And we sat down and they said, you know, Bertelsmann has a rule that when you're 60, you've got to either retire or consult with them. And the current head then of Bertelsmann was turning 60, and he had to do that. I was 68, and in the midst of all this glory, profits, they said, we'd like you to become head of worldwide A&R for all Bertelsmann companies, but you'll have to leave Arista. I said, leave Arista? I said, that is so stunning, so shocking. I can't even stay. I don't want to be rude, but I'm not staying for cocktail talk. I'm not leaving Arista like that. And I walked out. And headlines all over the world occurred right after that, because what no one really ever knew was a gentleman coming to become head of Bertelsmann worldwide, as the current one turned 60, would have to be a consultant, flew into New York to meet with me in my home. And he said, there's no way we'll ever, I can't head a company that allows you to leave. So this was the year 2000. And he said, I want you to come back and tell me the terms that you'll have to leave Arista, but I want a joint venture with you. Tell me what the terms of that joint venture would be that would satisfy you. I came back after research and consulting with Charles Goldstock, who was president of the label. And the biggest label ever formed before we started J Records was Interscope, and they required $32 million. I said, look, at this stage of my career, I'm not starting from scratch. I said, I want an instant major label. I want a full A&R department, a full product management department, a full promotion department. I want to be able, number one, to sign and hire an unlimited number of Arista executives to start with me, including the entire A&R department, all of these areas, without being able, of course, to offer them any more money, so that they could tear up the contract, but I was satisfied to pay them exactly what they were being paid. I would say the biggest career achievement in my memory was that I offered the entire A&R department and all these areas, including the president, the executive vice president, 18 executives, and all 18 came with me. And we asked for 150 million, not 32, but 150 million, as we started J Records. And I had the right to take 6 platinum artists with me, and any new artist who was in the studio and who had not had that first album released, knowing that Alicia Keys was one of those artists. So you can imagine, and I'm sorry to be wordy, overnight, J Records inherited everybody major at Arista. I signed Luther Vandross, I signed Busta Rhymes, and we exploded with Alicia. Those 2 years went by, and Arista did not have a hit, okay? Mm-hmm. And even the one album that Whitney did without me the one album bombed. And Bertelsmann came to me because now the joint venture was worth more than what I was getting paid, which is why they did this. And that profitable year of 2000. And they said, we're firing the executives, we're firing everybody in Arista. You will now have Arista, J, RCA, Jive. And 2 years later, they gave me the entire music business of Bertelsmann. So, yeah, there's vindication, there's resilience. So a message to your audience, if that happens to you, just reach deep down, fight back.
Because the through line there really seems that you were at the top of your game in both of these situations. When the Columbia firing happened, you moved from number 3 to number 1. When the Arista move had happened,
Yes.
Supernatural, Grammy Album of the Year, all the accolades, all the success was there. So it wasn't your success that was ever the issue. There were other things that were happening. Some of
the
those
other things I explained.
Right.
You know what was happening that year? I made $23 million. They didn't like that I had a phantom equity in the company. So they thought they would stop that. And of course, you forget when you're purely a businessman how important creativity is, how important a great executive team is. It's not easy. You don't do it. And so I was fortunate to prevail, yes. But there was a lot of pain in the interim.
Yeah. I'm sure a big piece of this too is having ownership to some degree, because that gives you the ability to dictate certain terms, but also gives you the opportunity to bet on yourself. You don't just need to be a CEO employee. You can raise the funds, you can get the support, and you can get the team to make it work wherever you are.
Yes.
And that's a good skill there. And that's another connection I feel like
Well,
I've
I
seen
didn't have
throughout
any
your career.
ownership of Columbia. Not when that I had to win.
Right.
I had to be exonerated. I had to be vindicated. And that's what happened.
You mentioned Whitney earlier. So I do want to talk about her. Your career with her has been very well documented. And reading about you and her relationship, I want to hear about times that you and her may have disagreed. So let's say that Whitney had a particular idea for something and she pushed back on you. Do you have any stories there or anything unique to share?
I have one story because the way we worked together, she trusted my A&R instinct. I, with my A&R staff, did all the looking for material, let's say the first few albums. And the only ones that ever participated in the choice of repertoire was Whitney and me. It wasn't that I just signed her, but no father, no mother, no Bobby Brown, never. She always said, look, this has worked, because I would tell her, are you pitching yourself? Do you know we just had 7 consecutive #1 records and an all-time record? So that we did that together. The one time, I think we were doing the second album, I played her a song written no less by the great Kenny Edmonds, Babyface. Why does it hurt so bad? She says, that's not me. I said, well, that's fun. Let's have fun with this. I mean, because she had never said no. And despite our different backgrounds, we operated so unbelievably as a team, mutual trust. Because when you get a demo, I want to dance with somebody, you would have thought the demo would be for Olivia Newton-John. But I would hear in my ears the kind of arrangement to make it soulful. But you don't want to dance with somebody, you want to go to bed with somebody, and it had to be sexier, more soulful. She'd get it immediately, understood it immediately. If you have time, I'll tell you a thing that was amazing. I said, well, what is it about? Why does it hurt so bad that you don't? She said, if a guy betrays me, if a guy is unfaithful to me, if a guy rejects me, A, my religion tells me, have confidence in yourself. This is not the right guy for you. B, I know in my heart this is not the right guy for me. And so I would just move on. I then candidly, because we were family by then, okay, I said, this just shows how spoiled you are. Because let me tell you, that song is universal truth. Babyface wrote universal truth. And if you're the average person in a monogamous relationship with somebody, and that person rejects you or betrays you, etc., you're hurt. And you hurt bad. She said, well, okay, it's the first time we've disagreed. We moved on. When she left, I called Babyface up. I said, Kenny, Whitney doesn't feel the song is for me. Normally, you can't ask a writer to put something on hold because that's how they make money. But Whitney's first album had just sold 26 million copies. And he said, of course, I'll leave it for you. So I put the demo with the lyric sheet in the upper right-hand drawer. Fast forward, I think about 5 years, okay? I get a call from Whitney. Let's have lunch. I said, really? Okay, how come we don't have an album that we're coming with? We were doing Bodyguard, Waiting to Exhale, Preacher's Wife, movies. She said, I don't want to talk on the phone. I want to come in and be with you. I said, okay. So she came in with her hamburger and Coca-Cola. And she said, I didn't want to tell you on the phone. I'm leaving Bobby. I'm getting a divorce. I'm not blaming either party for the well-known mutuality of drug use. I can't, but I listened, and she said it's just one hurt too much and one betrayal too much, so I'm getting divorced. So we chatted about that, obviously. She said, only once in our career together, I didn't feel the song was right for me. Who recorded that song? I said, no one. She said, no one. How could that be? I said, I put it on hold. Really? What was the name of it? I told her the name. Why does it hurt so bad? I took it out of the upper right-hand drawer where I had left it. She said, let's play it. And I played it with her reading the lyric sheet. She said, I'm ready. She said, I'm ready to record it. I understand it now because I hurt real bad.
Mm. I have to imagine part of that is probably a timing perspective as well, because when she did her second album, that's still I Want to Dance with Somebody, very much pop dance. Like you said, some of those songs could be more Olivia Newton-John. But then you have the third album, a lot of Babyface, a lot of L.A. Reid involved with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then that feels like that is then, it's easier for her to see that. It was also after the Soul Train Awards. So maybe there was a bit of a shift there to say, okay, now I have to see, now I'm more willing to do this.
No. With all due respect, she didn't get it the first time she read the lyric of that song. And it was a young girl not having experienced the pain of rejection. And whereas 5 years later, she loved Bobby, very attracted to Bobby, all these stories about her sexuality. It took years of betrayals before she was ready, but she hurts. That's the point. she hurt so bad. She understood it. She was 5 years or so older. Um, and she was ready to understand that.
That makes sense. That makes sense. We talked a bit about Babyface, and of course, LaFace was one of the groups or one of the labels that had a joint venture with Arista. And I would be interested to hear, how do you decide when a group like LaFace wants to do a joint venture? How do you find the right balance between what they control, what you control? Because it's different than a typical deal, but you're still offering some level of support. How do you figure that out?
When I brought L.A. Reid and Babyface to produce Whitney, I'm Your Baby Tonight resulted, because we wanted to make sure that there were enough urban flavored material as well as just great songs in there. So we got along. They had their first #1 pop hit with that. I had established that relationship. You've got to be very careful with label deals. You've got to be very careful because the investment is large and the cost is great. So that I learned that producing a lot of hits is great, but it doesn't mean that you're a great talent scout. And a great A&R person does not have to actually be a studio producer to build a track record of hits, of discoveries of people you discover. So that I found a lot of my competitors were giving label deals just to successful producers who were able to produce a string of hits without making a separate judgment that they could discover artists before they even go in the studio. And a number of producers who had hits, the kind of, I would ask them to bring to my attention artists that they would sign. So I really never made, says he immodestly, an unsuccessful label deal, because I did take that second step. And a hit producer or a producer of hits, they would bring people that could never be stars. They could never be unique or what have you. They didn't have the magic. They didn't have the charisma. The thing I'm proudest of is that my discoveries, if you will, 50 years later are still headlining, you know. They're not just been one hit or two hit wonders. So that L.A. and Babyface showed me. We had meetings. They showed me talents they were interested. And LaFace, you know, with Usher, with Tony Braxton, with Pink, without Cast, we had an incredible run of success there. As far as they in effect become your A&R team. So they absorb the cost of production of the records as well as the videos that accompany it. But they turned that over to Arista. We did the promotion, we did the marketing, we did the sales of it. And so that's how you arrange the economic situation. But if you do make a label deal, make sure they are able to discover and not just have hit records without the discovery in there.
How important is their business skills as well? Because they are running a business as well, in addition to being the talent scout and producing.
The ability to have a business sense is very important because you want them to be successful. And there were issues, you know, at LaFace because the artist discovery was phenomenal. The hits they had were phenomenal. But I'm sure you read that TLC was very unhappy. You know why they were unhappy, or Tony? Because the cost of their videos were extraordinary. Waterfalls, or the cost of making the album. There are always advances against royalties, and that gets charged to the artist. So you've got to run a tight ship. You've got to have a label in front of you. And the artist has got to have management that makes sense. I mean, because TLC were brilliant, incredibly talented. But the royalties were affected by the cost of the videos and the cost of the recordings, which were extraordinary.
You mentioned music videos, the 90s, that is big budget era for music videos. Do you know the most money that you ever spent on a music video?
I don't. I mean, I think we were a tight ship. I don't think that we went crazy at Arista. No. I mean, I wish I could give you, I don't wish I could give you, I'm happy not to give you an example, because my marketing team, the team that Charles Goldstock and Tom Corson were always cost efficient.
Right, and that was definitely an era for lavish spend across the industry.
Yeah.
Maybe not with Arista, but across the industry. There was quite a bit of it. Shifting gears a bit, we talked about Santana. There are other artists as well that you helped revive their careers, and they were already legends, but you gave them another opportunity to do what they do well. Aretha Franklin, Dionne Warwick, also in that category. Are there certain things that an artist needs to have for a revival to be able to happen? Are there any artists that...
I am very proud, honestly, not just of the artists that I discovered from scratch, but where I believed that an artist was timeless, where I believed, like Barry Manilow, because I was given 2 songs on every album of Barry, because Mandy went to #1, and that was our first record. And so the track record then of finding I Write the Songs and Can't Smile Without You, Barry nicely and wisely gave me 2 automatic songs on every album, and they all went to the top of the charts. As well as his songs that he wrote. He's in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. But we supplemented it with each other. So a song came in to me that I was 5 years would have to wait to record, because I'm only given 2 on every album. I said, dummy, look for a female artist who can sing this song, who is not having hits today but should, and it should be a woman. It can't be a male. And that's when I thought of Dionne Warwick. And I called Dionne. I said, Dionne, I just came across this song you can have an incredible hit with. She said, true story, word for word, I'm about to leave the record industry. I'm so unhappy with the last 3 years. She was no longer working with Burt Bacharach and Al David. She hadn't had a hit. I said, come in. We had dinner. I played her I'll Never Love This Way Again. What a wonderful career we've had together, because not only did that become a hit, but Deja Vu became a hit. In fact, that year at the Grammys, Dionne won Best Pop Female Vocalist and Best R&B Female Vocalist for Deja Vu and I'll Never Love This Way Again. That attracted the inimitable, incomparable Aretha Franklin. And Aretha and cooked dinner for me one night. She said, look, I'm approaching 40. I'm no longer working with Jerry Wexler. Do you think I could have hits after I'm 40? I said, Aretha, there's no one like you. I mean, from the minute I rang the bell to her house to come for dinner, there was no one like Aretha Franklin. I mean, I don't care if you were Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, whomever, wherever I went with Aretha, she was the queen, and they deferred to her. I'll never forget, we went to a Valentino retrospective. She said, come with me. One of my gowns is being reshown. So I went with her. And 5 minutes later, there's a teenage tut at my elbow, a famous gentleman. I looked around and spotted, and he said, Clive, I have never done this before. Would you introduce me to Aretha? That was Ralph Lauren. I mean, that is, so my relationship with Aretha, what happened with Rod Stewart with the Great American Songbook, 27 million over 5 albums, after a record label had rejected the idea of him doing the Great American Songbook, and worked closely with him. Among the most heartfelt pleasures was Luther. And as he got so ill from his stroke, he had written, I want to dance with my father again. And we knew we were writing just an incredible song. And he got a stroke. And he never really, he was in the hospital. His documentary is good, but it didn't make the punchline that I know is such a vivid memory for me. When the doctors called me, the manager, Carmen Romano, called, he said, the doctors, Luther has not spoken. And we just were nominated for several Grammys for Dance with My Father Again. Would you come to the hospital? So, of course, I went to the hospital. I go into this big room, and there's Luther on this bed, and I came over to him. There was no immediate sign of recognition. But I said, Luther, I'm here because we've been nominated for the Grammys that I know you so love. And it's so personal to me that I will go to the Grammys with you. And so I'm here to find out, what hotel would you want to stay at? It's a true story. Where he looked at me for a full minute. And although he had never said a word after the stroke that he had, he looked at me and said, the Beverly Hills Hotel. Well, it was a few weeks of glee, and although he improved, unfortunately, Luther passed. But I get as much pleasure from signing an artist that others might have thought peaked and or too old. Aretha, Dion, Santana. 25 years later, we did his great album of the year 2000 with Smooth and Maria Maria. It's like I think the 12th best-selling album of all time. And he was 55, didn't sing, and was just a guitar god. But he was there. I signed him originally in 1969, I believe. And that's a great story. So, yeah, it's great to discover someone new, Alicia, Whitney, Bruce, Janice, etc. But it's also so fulfilling with the greatest artists of all time, including Aretha and Dion.
And for you, that drive to revitalize the career of an artist that another label or another executive may have thought peaked, is part of that your drive to prove that, okay, I can do what they can't do, or I see something, or my personal taste is what can get this over the hump?
I don't think of competition when I do that. I mean, I want to tell you something for you or your audience. I always said my mantra was not that. My mantra was I get paid a lot of money to worry. So I'm a worrier. I don't feel when I sign it and I say, oh, I'm going to do something the competition would or would not do. No, it doesn't enter my mind. The decision to sign. You worry, can I do this? How do I do this? And so that's the reason I really do that. But I worry. What do you have to do to make sure that you're writing a hit? Attention to detail is so important. Work ethic is so important. I'll give you an example. Aretha would only give 3 takes to any producer producing her because she rehearsed herself, a genius in her. She was prepared. So when she came to the studio, as compared to most artists who were learning in the studio, she knew the song backwards and forward, okay? And I don't care who the producer was. They would all call me, she's only giving me 3 takes. That is all she did. But I found a way, and they would all call, how do you get Aretha after she would only give us 3 takes, and they were all successful producers, and you get her to go back to the studio? What's the secret? And I said, very simple. Once I listened to the material that she recorded, if I identified a candidate for a single and said, your incredible ad-libs at the end of the record are obscuring the chorus from being repeated enough in its full melodic flavor, this is a single. It won't be a single because although you sing great, for a single, that chorus has got to be repeated on melody before you start your ad-libbing. She got that instantly. I mean, the most important thing is, do I have a single here? And if she knew that she could have a single, she'd go right in the studio and put you, your advice to actuality.
And this thing that you've done so well, revitalizing these artists' careers, there are a lot of people in music right now that are trying to do this same thing when they're acquiring music rights or they're doing deals to have those types of transactions. Do you have any thoughts on the rise in popularity in that space, particularly whether it's private equity firms or record labels acquiring the music rights to then try to do the same type of thing?
I don't see the analogy right now from what you're asking. Catalog deals that are being done now in music publishing are being put at a very high price based on earnings. And it really depends, because certain artists, certain writers, Diane Warren will never sell her catalog in a million years. But on a practical basis, if you are a senior and you have a family, you don't want a catalog of music to go into your estate where the tax people will come in and levy a half 500 million or 300 million or 200 million. You got to come up with the cash to pay those taxes. So I understand why certain senior grade writers have sold their catalog. But that's catalog. It's not reviving a career of an artist to have hit records again. Copyrights that become standards show, and it's a different concept entirely, that there's nothing like a great song, so that it could be revived again. It could be redone again. Look what we did with Rod Stewart with A Great American, a songbook, Dancing in the Dark, and You Go to My Head. They have a way of keep going. I had fun this very week. I don't know who I was with, but we decided to list from years ago the greatest composers of all time and of all the songs written. So I tell you and Irving Berlin, it's awesome. God Bless America, White Christmas. Always. Nobody, I don't think anybody has ever written the number of standards that an Irving Berlin, a Cole Porter, or a Sammy Cahn, or Julie Stein, or Rodgers and Hammerstein. When I was growing up in New York, you would go to Central Park, 100,000, 200,000 people, just to hear the music of Rodgers and Hammerstein. It was awesome. And it's awesome if you contemplate, if you have an evening like that, what songs you'd hear.
And to clarify, you're right. In these music rights deals and the publishing and the catalog, it's less often, oh, let's make a new record for this artist. But what we do see is similar to Whitney Houston and Primary Wave. Oh, there's the Higher Love track, and then Kygo does the remix. So that's not a new record, but I think we're starting to see people try to do examples like that, for instance.
I was very proud this past year, it was about a year or two ago, where the Billboard staff voted on the best 100 songs or so of all time. And I Want to Dance with Somebody came in at number one. One day, which I haven't done yet, I would love to just play the demos of those songs that I gave to Whitney or Aretha or Barry or Santana, what the demos sounded like. You would have sworn that I Want to Dance with Somebody should be for Olivia Newton-John. But Whitney, with her genius and our collaboration, we knew what it was capable of being. So it was thrilling to see the recognition of that.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Switching gears, I want to talk about music today. And you mentioned you're still listening to new artists. Do you listen to music streaming? Do you listen to Spotify? How do you listen to
I
music?
listen to Spotify. I certainly stream. But basically, it's not that at my age that I'm going to sign an artist, but I am going to choose from my pre-Grammy Gala, among the hits of today, who will I invite to perform at my party. That is very key and important to me. And so I'm very aware and current. And this year's Grammy party, you were there.
I was there.
Darren Criss and Olivia Dean and Alex Warren. And they were chosen by me because they're really the goods. And I make sure that night is unique and very, very special.
Mm. And as we're closing things out, I do want to talk about your current role in the music business and mentorship. You are seen as one of the leading moguls and executives who helped build the modern business. Are the current executives in the space, do you have any mentor-mentee relationships there? Do they come to you for advice, especially as we're talking about how to work with these particular artists or how to navigate the business dynamics? Is there anyone that you work closely with?
Well, there are so many people, that really have my admiration, okay? Rob Stringer and the great job he's doing at Sony, Peter Edge, at RCA, young Larry Jackson, whom I think is a friend of yours, and the big venture at Gamma. And I still go into Sony in New York at least twice a week. And a number of the executives there certainly play stuff for me and give advice. But I'm very proud of the executives that I've groomed. I'm very proud of the executives that helped me achieve what I have achieved. So that in seeing so many as presidents or heads of other record labels, I mean, the personal relationship comes first. So I'm very proud of a number of the alumni, who now head music companies throughout the industry.
Mm. No, that's good to see. It's been good to see. And then to close things out, to talk about legacy. There's a lot that's been talked about, your accomplishments, you've written your books, your documentaries, but is there anything that you think doesn't get enough highlight or any accomplishments you think that get overlooked?
Look, I'm very grateful for the recognition that I have received. I don't, other than in the difficulties that I've had to overcome, errors and fact, which we mentioned earlier today, that's what I would say gets me upset most. Not that my achievements are not recognized. Just everybody coming to my Grammy party without exception is total recognition. But in defining resilience or challenges that you overcome, I find it important to tell the truth, to give the facts, and not be upset in bad reporting itself. So that is what I think can get my dander more than not getting recognized, because I feel the connection there keenly.
And you keep the media on their toes as well. I remember when we did our Trapital episode about you, you had some notes for me afterwards. So I know you stick to your word. You do.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you.
Well, Clive, I appreciate you making the time to do this. This conversation has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
What a conversation. And we kept talking after the cameras cut as well. Clive has so many stories because he is one of the people that truly built this industry. It was such a unique experience to be able to speak with him and pull out a few more of those stories as well. Thank you to everyone that had a part in making this happen. Special thanks to the team at DKC News, Sony Music, Glendale Podcast Studios, Fred and Charlie Davis, and our podcast editors as well to help make this unique episode, my sit-down conversation with Clive Davis, possible. Thanks again. Talk to you next time.